Greetings, everybody. I'm Marc David, founder of the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your attention. I am here today with Dani Spies. Hey, Dani.
Hey Mark, how's it going?
Really good. So glad you're here. So, we're going to be exploring with Dani her unique career that she's created for herself, blending holistic nutrition, eating psychology, life coaching, and more. We're also going to explore some of her perspectives on what we teach at the Institute, eating psychology, what her experience was like going through our professional certification training. That's the Mind Body Eating Coach training. Um, Dani, let me just brag about you for a moment. Uh, Dani is a health, wellness, and weight loss coach. She's the founder of Clean and Delicious. That's a very popular health website that helps people improve vitality through recipes, mind body online programs, and a focus on the role of our thoughts and emotions and just overall well being. Dani reaches over 2 million people through her popular weekly cooking show on YouTube. Congratulations.
Thank
And,
you.
and she teaches others how to make healthy eating easy while improving their relationship with food and body. What a unique combination that you're able to do that. So you've created, a very unique career, what sounds to me like a great career for yourself. I'm just wondering, can you just share a bit about your professional journey, how you arrived at the Dani that you are today?
Yeah. So I always say like my work has literally been born out of my desire to have a healthy relationship with food and body, and I've always loved cooking and eating. So when I was younger, I was constantly trying to unlock the keys to weight was a big one for me, losing weight, eating better, being healthy, all of the things. And I studied so many different arenas. Like I studied all of the traditional paths, like I fitness and nutrition. I became a personal trainer. Um, and I what there was to know, but I still had a hard time implementing what I wanted to be embodying. And so it really wasn't until I started to discover a little bit more of a broader perspective, like the eating of psychology, and a little bit more of an approach that was more whole person oriented, that it started to come together for me. So I don't know if I really just answered your question, but most of the work that I do was born out of my own desire to learn how to have a healthy relationship with food, body, and self ultimately.
It seems like that is such a common
Mhm.
experience for people who get into the helping professions, especially around health, especially around body, around eating challenges. We are looking in the mirror at our own journey and hey, how do I create a successful relationship with my own experience of food and body? And then, yep, same thing happened for me. Once I started feeling like I was getting somewhere personally there, like I was clearing up some of my confusion and my uncertainty, I just wanted to help other people.
Right. Well, that's the same, was exactly the same for me. It was like my brain was so stuck on this one path, right? Like to do things. It was like there was some answer out in the world. I just need to figure out how to get it to work in my own life. Um, and as I began to really understand that we have to truly consider ourselves on this journey and our lifestyle, our desires, our, what works for us, what doesn't, um, that I was able to start to put the pieces together. And then once that started happening, I remember just feeling like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders, right? That I could, I mean, I remember just years ago really learning the concept that I learned this from you of, eating emotionally and overeating, because I struggled with that a lot in my younger years. The idea that, oftentimes when we're reaching for food, and we're not hungry, that we're actually, taking our best attempt to care for ourselves in that moment. And that for me was like a life changing concept, because I really, up until that point, was like shaming myself and faulting myself for my habits with food rather than understanding them. And that's so much of what I try to teach today, even on YouTube, which is our cooking channel, where it's 90% of the content is cooking. I really try to infuse the idea that there's so many different ways to go about it. Like, is there a playing field? Yes, like eat real whole foods, close to their natural state as possible, most of the time, right? But outside of that, there's so much open space and different things that work for different people rather than just trying to present like a dogmatic approach to nutrition, and telling people exactly what they need to do.
That's been, I think, such a fascinating trend, and it's been a trend that I've been trying to, move forward and speak to for a long time, which is, yes, good nutrition is important. Let's talk about good nutrition. Let's talk about good eating. Let's talk about healthy meals. And we have to talk about who we are as eaters. We have to talk about
Yes.
our eating psychology. So I'm wondering, what else comes to mind for you when I ask the question, from your experience out there, why is eating psychology an important topic for people to take notice of?
I think because it's like 90% of the puzzle. I think, like you said, food is important, and I love food, and most of what I do talks about food. But at the end of the day, it's not that complicated. Food in and of itself is not that complicated. It's really not. If you boil it down to the simple, ideas of like what real whole foods are, and what that it's most people have a pretty grounded sense. If you showed them two plates, gave them two options of which is going to be the more nutritious option, right? uh, that is not what I find to be the ongoing challenge that most people have with food. It's it's more of a reflection of their ability to understand what they want, what they need, what their relationship with their selves are, what their beliefs about their selves are, what their beliefs about food are, right? And all of those different components are not about food. And so I would say that eating psychology is 90% of the journey. And so much so to the point where it's interesting. Like sometimes I'll have people who will ask me specific nutrition questions, and I don't really even read books like that anymore, because I feel like, we can get into like the nitty gritty of every little nutritional aspect that is out there, but it doesn't really, unless you are just so turned on by that topic, it really doesn't serve the average person, right? It's such a bigger conversation when it comes to wellness and having a healthy relationship with food and body. So to answer your question, I would say it's important because it's 90% of, I think, the puzzle.
Yeah. What I've noticed over the years is that so many people, I started out as an absolute nutrition fanatic because when I was young, I was very sickly, and my parents were taking me from doctor to doctor with that because I had asthma, I had an autoimmune condition. I was not a healthy child, and you know, none of the professionals were able to help. And at some point, I had heard a rumor that fruits and vegetables were good for you. I was probably like 5 or 6 years old, and I asked my mother to change my diet because I was raised on all the junk food of that generation. And, coincidence or not, my health started to change. And so I was just on a fierce crusade for so many years of good nutrition, good nutrition. And then I started to notice when I became a coach and was working with people from a young age, I was working with some smart people, some very educated and highly motivated people. I would tell them what to eat. Here's the list of foods you should eat to help you lose weight. And they come back a week or two later and say, yeah, yeah, I know what you told me to do. I just couldn't do it. And it was
Yes.
then I realized, oh my goodness, until I actually understand the mind of the eater and eating
Yes.
psychology, I really can't help a significant amount of my clients. So, so many people are turning to nutrition to solve their issues with binge eating or overeating or emotional eating, but you can't solve it
You
necessarily.
can't solve it. Nope. That's it. That's to your point is exactly right, right? The idea of like good nutrition is important. It's super important, but it's not complicated, right? So most people can grasp the simple concept of like what is a real whole food? What do you want to have on your plate most of the time? That's not usually where the challenge comes in beyond that. Because once you have that intellectual information, what is the challenge in applying it? And that opens up a much bigger conversation, and to me, that's more of what the psychology of eating embodies. I know, like for me, I had a gigantic aha moment when I was pregnant with my daughter. This was 14 years ago, because I had, again, I studied nutrition and fitness. I was a personal trainer. I was coaching people. I was doing all of the things, but I still wasn't where I wanted to be physically and or with my internal relationship with food, body, and myself. And when I got pregnant with my daughter, I came into this place where I really had the healthiest relationship. It was like all of the challenges that I had with food had fallen away. And when I looked back at that, the reason my dog is growling, Charlie, the reason that was for me is because, sorry, okay. The reason that was is because I recognized that was the first time in my life that I really gave myself permission to not have to change how I looked. It was like I had permission to be in the body I was in because I was pregnant. And so I share that to say that the irony, oftentimes we're putting all this time and attention on food, and we don't realize like the underlying reason why we're hyper focused on the food and the nutritious, and we put all the responsibility on the food and nutrition. But the truth for me, like at that time, is that there was a bigger conversation that needed to be had for myself, which is, why am I not allowing myself to be in the body am I in, and why am I not accepting where I am right now? And that has nothing to do with food. So
That's such a powerful distinction, I think, and I'm really glad you brought it up because it seems to me that weight challenges around weight, the desire to lose weight, is sort of ground zero for so many people with their unhappiness around food and body. So I want to lose weight. And what I've noticed is so many people make the choice and say, I won't be happy until I hit my number. So it's
yes.
almost like saying, okay, when I hit this number, I'm going to be happy. But until then, I'm essentially not going to like my life. I'm not going to like myself, which likely means I'm going to be criticizing myself.
Hmm.
And I'm going to I'll be speaking ill of myself. And I still meet people who've been dieting for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And I don't like myself until I lose the weight. And
Yes.
oh, it breaks my heart.
Yeah. I know. I know. And I think it's extremely common when it comes to weight loss. And that's the cycle that people get stuck in, is this idea that somehow like happy ever after like lives in a certain body, rather than, and then of course what happens there is that we get so, this idea that we have to get somewhere, and then people try to bully themselves to the finish line, right? Which just creates more disconnection internally, which makes it that much harder to make any forward progress. It's a cycle for sure. It's funny because the program that I have around weight, it's called the Don't Diet, and it's because I spent so many years giving up all of my power to a diet. Like I always say, it was like I was giving all my power to an external program, and I use that as a means to detach from myself, right? Like we think there's something outside that's more wise, more valuable, more, knowing than ourselves. And then what happens in that journey is unknowingly you detach from your own inner wisdom. You detach from your own knowing and your ability to trust and tap into yourself. And that's so much more about what the work is about. So, and to the point of the conversation, again, it's not food. It's right. That's a psychology of eating. It's a practice with self. And food is a beautiful doorway that can lead that to ourselves, lead us to that part of ourselves.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking how there's this fascinating conundrum because on the one hand, so many people want to eat healthy and want to know, okay, how do I prepare healthy meals? How do I what do I eat? And on the other hand, dieting for weight loss, pretty much most diets out there are essentially teaching people how not to eat.
Right.
Like, here's how you don't eat. Here's how you skip meals. Here's how you go low calorie. Here's how you have more behavioral modification control. And dieting is focused on I shouldn't eat and food is the enemy. Whereas I think part of the challenge is we're here to create a good relationship with food, to learn how to become an eater in what that most naturally means for us. But people are, sort of split in their personalities. I think because the media keeps telling us, on the one hand, you need to diet, and dieting means essentially some form of not eating or eating less or eating restrictively. And yet, being in a healthy relationship with food means you love food, you cook it, you experience
Yes.
it, you taste it.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is like it's a cycle, right? And if there's a shame, there's an underlying like shaming that takes place there. Like you should know better, you should be able to do this, you should be able to, right? It's like all of the food, all of it's a catch 22 for a lot of people. And I love what you just said because it's true. Like a healthy relationship with food is a celebration of food, right? It's loving your appetite. It's loving food. It's cooking food, it's eating food. It's not figuring out how to stop having it as a part of your life experience. That would be the exact opposite. So it's quite a journey,
It
Mark.
is. It is. I just want to take a moment and acknowledge some of the people who are tuning in right now. Loretta from Sacramento, thanks for being here. Sue from Canada, appreciate you coming by. Joseph, thanks for being here. Rihanna, Kathleen, Susan Connolly, Lene, a bunch of people. Leah, thanks for coming by. And Craig, I appreciate you being here. Lenora as well. So, what do you notice in terms of when you're in your teaching role or a coaching role? What are some of the things that you do with clients or students that creates aha moments for them, that helps them reframe, helps them see food and body in a new light?
Well, I think step one for everybody, and what I see often is an awareness of the internal conversations that we're often having with ourselves, which is tends to be harsh and judgmental and critical. And again, you're like, well, how does that relate? But it does because people don't recognize that they don't give themselves permission to learn, right? To be on a journey, to see a different perspective. And so there's a self-judgment that is often taking place, which creates a desperation to change what they think is their weight. And so something that I see over and over again, and something I really work on with my clients, is creating like a kinder relationship with ourselves as the base of any work or goal that we want to have, right? Like if you think when you get to be a certain amount of weight that you're then going to turn into this, happy, healthy, loving person, like that's just a lie that we tell ourselves, and how so much of what we desire is available to us right now when we can drop that inner dialogue that often people don't even recognize they have.
I think it's so true. We get accustomed to believing that the negative internal self conversation that I'm in, the self criticism about my body, somehow that's useful. Somehow that's correct. Somehow that's noble, even. And
Mm-hmm.
I like to say to people, if your friends and your family or your loved one or your husband or your wife or your boyfriend and girlfriend, if they said the same things to you that you say to yourself in your head,
Right.
you wouldn't have them in your life. If they were saying to you, I'm not going to love you until you lose 25 pounds or 10 pounds, I'm
Right.
not going to love
Right.
you until you lose 5 pounds from this particular part of your body, we would be appalled if somebody said,
It's It's true. And even like I always say there's like even like sneaky little thoughts that people have, and the idea of like if you're thinking to yourself, I really should eat the salad. And I always say to people, whatever, say it aloud, right? Like say it aloud like you were talking to another person, and you can really hear how that's not nice. Right? Like we don't even recognize, we think we're like, oh, that's not so bad. But it's a great practice to get your conversation onto a piece of paper and read it out loud and pretend you're telling this to your daughter or pretend you're telling this to your best friend and hear, the words and the tonality that you're speaking it, and they go, oh my gosh, of course I want that, glass of wine or that donut, because often we're trying to ease ourselves from ourselves. We're trying to find relief from the dialogue that we carry on unconsciously in our own mind. So for me, a huge part of the playing field is like, be nice, just be where you are. Yes, we want something different. I get that. I have many things I want different in my life right now, right? And you can be perfectly okay. Like they can coexist.
I love how you said that, and I might be paraphrasing here, but, so much of uh, us turning to food is trying to ease ourselves from our own negative self talk. Because, I mean, think about
Yes.
it. The negative self talk is, I'm too fat. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. My body needs to be different. Nobody's going to love me
I
until
should
I'm
have
this
done
weight.
this. I should have done that. Yep.
Exactly. And then that's uncomfortable. That makes me unhappy. And what do I do when I'm unhappy? I turn to food because it makes me temporarily happier. So then I find myself emotionally eating, and the very thing that I'm trying to avoid, I'm kind of creating.
100%. And I learned this from you, which is, I think, brilliant, right? Is the idea that our bodies crave homeostasis, right? Our bodies don't want to be super tight. They don't want to be super contracted. And so when you're carrying a negative dialogue and you have this like internal bully that's going on in your head all day long and your body is in a state of contraction, the desire to eat something to create a little more expansion and openness, sugar, flour, alcohol, is actually your body's way of trying to help you, right? It's not because there's something wrong with us. It's not because we have no self-control and no willpower. It's like there's so much good always trying to get in. If we could just drop the conversation and see, how our bodies are brilliant, how we're kind of brilliant because we're part of our bodies, and it's all just happening for us. Um, you know, but again, that contradicts the main narrative. So it creates a lot of confusion, which I get.
Mhm. Let me ask you a question about your professional journey. At what point did you say to yourself, I now have more confidence? I now feel like I'm ready to really coach somebody in a whole different way. And even when you moved into teaching, how did you make that leap inside yourself?
Well, I mean, I think it's like so cliche, which is like I don't know that I ever felt like totally ready, right? You just kind of trust the process a little bit. But I think for me, again, like earlier in my career, I was kind of following that black and white road of like nutrition and health and fitness and training. And when I started to study more broadly, meaning like psychology, eating, integrative nutrition, all of those concepts, um, I could see that so much of the journey was in people's stories. And so knowing that a big part of my work to do was to not just listen to somebody's story, but create a space so somebody else can hear their story, right? Like we don't have that in our life. A lot of people don't have that, a place where you can just get it all out and like be seen and heard and hear yourself. And so I think really understanding that uh, it wasn't my job to present any type of like fix for somebody, but to create a space for them, that gave me confidence because it felt like something bigger than myself, right?
Mhm.
And I know that those were tools that literally transformed me. So knowing that, oh, I can do that, like I can do that, that was big for me.
Danny, I'm so glad you brought that up and made that distinction around fixing people, because what I find is a lot of people who get into coaching, health coaching, and working with people's health issues, their eating challenges, their weight challenges, we think that I need to be able to fix this other person. Like they're broken, I've got to fix them. And if I fix them, I'm a good coach. And if I don't fix them, I'm a bad coach. And that puts a lot of pressure on, because we can't even fix ourselves most of the time. So,
Right.
to your point, there's a place that when we create a safe space, and yeah, we have tools and we have techniques and we have education, but we're really listening to a person and we're listening to their story. It really becomes, I find, like a collaborative process, because even though
Yes.
the client that I'm working with, they don't know what to do to get out of their emotional eating or their binge eating, or they don't know what to do to lose weight. Once they have somebody listening and somebody they can tell their story to, and without me as the practitioner putting the pressure on myself, like I have to fix this person, then I can actually listen to them. I can actually hear them
Mm,
better and actually pick out good strategies. So
yes.
I just think that's so key for practitioners to be able to take that stress off of ourselves. Of course, I want to help everybody who comes to
Yeah.
see me. And there's a certain trust in that process. There's a certain trust in that journey, I think.
Yes, I agree. And I think just acknowledging, right, that the journey is in the process, right? That for everybody. And my clients help me even see that, right? It's always a two-way relationship, but just knowing that yes, we all are trying to do things and accomplish things and, but that how much of that journey is in the process of being on the journey. So, yeah, that I think is a big piece of it for me.
As you look to the future of, the health field, the wellness field, health coaching in general, perhaps, where do you see the industry going? Because you've been in it for a while and you've gone through so many of your own iterations as a professional. When you kind of hold up your future magic wand, where do you see things going?
I don't really know, except that I would say that I think that this type of conversation will continue to become broader and bigger and more prominent because I think that you just get to a point when this conversation isn't being had, you're just hitting a lot of like dead ends, right? And so the beauty of social media and like the whole online world now is that you can you can hear these conversations, right? You can find these people easier. You can because I know like for myself when I first found your work, and I don't remember how that was, but when I first found your work, it was like a blossoming. That's what it felt like for me, right? It was like a whole world opened up that I was like, I didn't even know it was there. I knew there was something else. I could feel that, but I didn't have the information. And I like all the tools that I was already using, I just kept like trying the same thing again and trying the same thing again. And it wasn't working. And it wasn't until I kind of the conversation became broader and bigger and more whole person and deeper and more soulful that I was like, yes, like this is what I've been looking for. So I believe that a lot of people feel that way, right? And that is the desire for many people, that is the information they're craving, wanting, looking for. And so I think the industry is going to continue to deepen itself as this type of approach is shared and becomes more prominent, which I just think is inevitable.
I believe that to be true. I really do. And we can spend probably a lifetime Googling about nutrition and health information, and it's all great. Like it really is. It's amazing how much you can get for free these days online, how much you can learn, going to support groups on social media. And at the end of the day, I find there's so much information out there that to me, there's a lot of people on information overload. There's a lot of, what I'll call nutrition refugees out there. They've read every book, they've been on
Yes,
every diet, they know more than most health coaches, and they're not even a coach or a doctor or a dietitian or a
so
nutritionist.
true.
And they're completely confused and they don't know what to do. And I felt from the beginning of my career, I read this in a book when I was in graduate school. The book was called Mega Trends, and it was some big corporate consulting, and he was just saying, here's going to be the big trends in the culture over the next 50 years. And he said one of the trends is going to be the movement from information to wisdom. And he
Mm,
said that in an age of vast amounts of information, people are going to be on information overload and wisdom will become more valuable.
so
Because,
good.
okay, here's all this information, but what's right for me in that? Here's all these nutritional possibilities. What's right for me? And what's going to be right for me or for you or for anybody is really us tuning into our own intuition or us being in a conversation where there's wisdom that can pinpoint, okay, what's right for you? So that's always inspired
Yes.
me.
Yeah, that's super inspirational. I that resonates 100%. And that's the irony too, right? With the access to information, which I think is amazing, right? There's so many things that you can have at your fingertips that maybe you would not have been privy to prior. But the catch with that is that there's so many things vying for your attention at all times that I do think that's going to be the next move is like reconnecting to stuff, right? That it's so easy to go outside and to look for information that it's much harder in today's world, I find, to quiet all of that and then come back to center to, as you just said, to say, okay, so how do I apply this for myself? What do I need to know? How is this going to help me? What do I want to take and what do I want to leave? And letting that inner wisdom come through. I mean, I think in many ways coaching is a process of pointing people back to their own inner knowing and their own inner wisdom. It's you're just really like reintroducing somebody to themselves because it's very easy to get pulled out of that.
Yes. Easy to get pulled out of it. And then I think what happens is we seem to live in a world where we almost overvalue expert advice and opinions. So, well, let me go to the expert who's going to fix me, or let me go to the one expert that has the best nutritional approach. And so we're always looking for the perfect diet or the perfect way of eating. And I don't know. I like to think that there's as many perfect ways to eat as there are people on the planet. Meaning, for you, there's the diet that's right for you, for me, and that's going to change for each one of us anyway over the years.
Yes. Yes. And
And
that's
it's so easy to think, well, let me just find the perfect diet and the right way to eat, and then I'm never going to have to think about it ever again.
right. I would love that too. That sounds
Right?
fantastic. But yeah, but it's not, right. It's so fluid and it's fluid in sometimes it's fluid in a week, sometimes it's in a day, right? And that's why I think so much of this work is about being able to like come back to that inner space, to trust yourself, to trust your journey, and one layer deeper to let yourself be okay where you are so that you can trust the journey. Because what I've found for myself and with my clients often is that it's this underlying idea that something isn't baseline okay that creates a desperation to change. And it's very easy to attach that change to body or food, right? So going back to a question you asked earlier, I think that's a reason why step one for so many people is just permission to be where you are, right? Permission to be yourself on this journey in this moment as a person that wants something different, who doesn't have that change yet, and it's still okay. Um, I think that's like the playing field
Yeah.
for a lot of this work.
Yes. There's an interesting question that popped up in the comments section. Thanks for asking this, Amelia. She says, "Is there a way to simplify the how not to be judgmental conversation for the client?"
How not to be judgmental of self,
Yes,
I
I think
assume.
that's what she's meaning. Yes.
I don't know if I'm fully grasping it, but my thoughts, and I'd love to hear yours, Mark, are number one, awareness. Like, are you aware of the judgments that you're carrying? Right? Because just creating the awareness, because when you say like how do you simplify it, well, first, do we even know what's like, are you clear on what you're trying to simplify? Does that make sense? Like, what is the dialogue, what is the conversation that we're having a hard time softening? Like, I would first want to know what those words are, what that conversation is, as step one. And then there's many other, then I would, I could continue to go, but I don't want to make it complicated. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Mark.
Yes, to me, your answer hits the target. to help another human being with their own internal judgment, I'm going to ask them, can you begin to please notice that? Become aware in the moment and be able to witness yourself saying to yourself judgmental statements. Because once I notice it, that voice tends to go on automatic pilot,
Yes.
for so many of us. And it seems to be part of the human condition that there's that inner critic who's just kind of going 24/7, and we have to notice that and say, okay, does this serve me? does
Doesn't
that
serve me.
does that constant judgment serve me? Is that useful to me? So oftentimes with a client, I'm gonna ask them, yeah, be aware of that internal judgment, and I want you to ask yourself the question, does this serve me? Has it served you? How long have you been dieting? How long have you been trying to lose weight? Has self-judgment and self-attack helped you get where you want to go?
Yes.
You know.
And just to like piggyback off of that, I'm right there with you. And I also know that, for so many people, like you said, like we don't necessarily think these thoughts. We have over 60,000 thoughts a day. Thoughts come in, we recycle thoughts. Some are just well practiced. Like I'm really good at having negative self thoughts. My brain is really good at that. And so the awareness is there, right? But also part of the process is, can you also, like Mark said, does it serve, and creating that awareness, but also know that sometimes just because there is a thought there, it doesn't mean you have to give energy or attention to it. You can let it be there and still let yourself be okay. Like sometimes I'll have negative thoughts and I'm just like, that's just part of Dani. Like there's that little part of my brain that wants to tell me I'm not doing this right and I'm not doing that right and this isn't. And it's just like sometimes I've come to see that trying to get under the hood and try to change it or redirect it sometime, it's just not worth the energy and attention. I just let it be there. I love it just like I love other parts of my thought processes, and you move forward, right? So much of it is like, where is the contraction? Where is the push coming from? And can you soften the space, right? Like if you're pushing it, if you notice you have negative thoughts and then you're judging in the negative thoughts. We're such fascinating human beings.
Mhm. It's Craig, who's in the conversation here, mentions that we typically beat ourselves up because of all the crap on social media, and in any media for that matter. It's easy to compare ourselves. It's easy to listen to all the nonsense and then be self-critical. I think alongside what we're
Yes.
saying about, learning to notice and be aware of the inner judge and begin to let that voice go. Part of it is also alongside of that voice, let's bring in a different voice. Let's bring in
Hmm.
the voice of, okay, what do I like about myself? What
Yes.
are what are the little baby steps of success that I'm taking? What's good? What gives me pleasure? What nourishes me? Because we're so focused on the negative. I think, people want to lose weight or they want to have a healthy relationship with food and body so they can be happy. Like at the end of the day, the belief is this is going to make me happy.
Yeah.
So if I'm taking a road of unhappiness, if I'm constantly beating myself up, I'm in negative self talk, which is a very unhappy experience, how can that end up in a destination called happiness?
Yes. Can't. That's the. And to your point too, I love the exercise that equal and opposite airtime. Meaning, so if you're having negative thoughts, take 5 minutes, write them out, see the conversation, create the awareness, and then invite yourself to equal and opposite airtime. Set your timer, 5 minutes. Now I'm going to write the opposite. I'm going to
Mm,
write what's going well, what I do like, what I have been practicing, what, right? And so it's fine. You're going to have the negative thoughts sometimes, and that's just part of being human. And can you also acknowledge that there's another part, right? And just knowing that both of that is, they're always going to live together to some extent.
yes, well put. What do you love the most about your work? What comes to mind?
What I love the most about my work, just feeling like, well, it depends which part of my work. I mean, I love when people make my recipes and they find easy way, they get excited about getting in the kitchen. They get excited about food. I mean, that makes me excited because I love I love food and I love cooking and I love eating and I love seeing that sparked in other people. I also really love when people have any type of aha moment on their journey. Like I think any type of perception shift, like Marianne Williamson always says that all a miracle is a shift in perception. And I love that concept. Like if somebody's, you know, in one thought process, something that's not serving them, and they just hear something a certain way, or, you know, listen, or we have a conversation and it shifts them, that to me is probably one of my favorite parts as well.
Hmm. Good for you. I I relate. Same here. Same here. In general, when I'm able
Yeah,
to help a person really be the best version of themselves, that's how I look at good food,
yeah,
good nutrition, good thinking. That's how I look at a healthy relationship with food. That's me and you being the best version of who we came here to be. We're natural creatures. We're eaters. We're meant to eat, and we're humans, and we're meant to enjoy, and we know that. We know we enjoy food.
yes,
No matter how
right.
problematic it is for us, we know we enjoy it deep down inside. So that's how we're designed, I think, to enjoy it, and yet so much gets in the way. So helping another human being clear out some of the weeds and find a
Yes.
more healthy and natural relationship with food, that can only help the health of the body.
Yes, and I think that's the irony, right? Is that so many of the approaches to help people with food or nutrition are it's asking you to do something that goes against your biology, right? That to look at food as the enemy or to think that food is the problem. There's something inside of us that doesn't jive with that, and then but then we still try to make it work, right? Which creates that contraction. It creates that this, and then of course, why not have a snack? Because that makes everything feel a little bit better for a while.
Hey, listen, I want to just take a quick moment and let people who are tuning in know about our Mind Body Eating Coach certification training. So, if you're tuning in right now and listening, by the way, we're enrolling for our October training as we speak. So, maybe if somebody from the Institute can drop a link into the comments section, that would be great to give people application or a place to learn more. So, Mind Body Eating Coach certification training, that's our 8 month fully online coach training where you learn about eating psychology, mind body nutrition. I'm the creator of that program, so I know what it's like, and I'm the main teacher to help people just up level their skills. We have graduates from over 100 countries now, which blows my mind, which really speaks, I think, to the worldwide challenge of our relationship with food and body. You know, our students come from all walks of life, many professional backgrounds. Some are new coaches, others go through the training for their own personal, enlightenment. And many people come with existing professional credentials, psychotherapy, nutrition, medicine, fitness, and a lot more. Dani, I'm wondering if you can comment about some of the, I don't know, highlights for you about taking the training, things that you think might be important for listeners to hear that inspired you, that helped you along your journey.
I mean, I say this, Mark. I truly, it's to me that the school and the course, the training it is life changing information. It really is. I think that while the message is growing, the depth that you take it to, the amount of content and the type of content, it's just not, we're just not getting that everywhere. And I think that a lot of people like myself, you feel something, right? Like we feel like there's another piece. You feel like you're doing the work and you're trying to apply things that you've learned and you're not quite finding that like alignment. So people feel that need, and I think that your course truly delivers something that is just not out there. Most people, you're not getting it in most places. I think just really your ability to zoom out and show how our relationship with food is reflecting our relationship with life, and having a bigger conversation, to me, is the biggest piece of it. Because I think when it comes to food and body, it's very easy to get super micro, and get hyper focused on things that it's no longer about. Like, it's not about the food anymore. We know to eat a vegetable. It's not about the exact number on the scale, right? There's more going on here, yet that focus for many people is super tight and super small, where I feel like your program really just goes like, whoo, it's like a whole new universe. That I know my experience was, it's just like, you're just like, yes, this is what I have been wanting. You don't even know what it is until you know what it is.
Mhm. I appreciate the kind feedback. And, so many people say that oftentimes, we know inside so many truths that we don't really know that we know them until we hear it coming from the outside.
Yeah,
And yeah, so many of our students
so true.
remark that this is what I've been looking for, and I didn't quite have words for it. So yeah, I really appreciate that. How can people find you?
People can find me here, well, on YouTube, Clean and Delicious on YouTube, or you can find me on my website, Clean and Delicious, and you can find me on social media, Clean and Delicious with Dani Spies.
All right. Well, Dani, I am so grateful to be in this conversation with you. Here we are, what, 13 or 14 years later, since
Crazy.
we first met, as you being a student in the training, and I've just really enjoyed following your career and your development and you stepping out, and you've managed to really create a great professional platform while being in a marriage and raising two kids. um, that's pretty amazing.
Yes, it is, Mark. Thank you.
It seems like you've managed to create a good work life balance for yourself.
No, we do for the most part. It ebbs and it flows, but so does everything. So it's good.
So true. Well, I really appreciate the conversation, Dani. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Always more to come, my friends. Please feel free to learn more about the training, learn more about us. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Thanks, Dani.
Bye bye. Yeah.